The Flash game, Road of the Dead, is set in Evans City, Pennsylvania, where a military-engineered virus called S14 is accidentally unleashed, turning most of the population into aggressive zombies within just 7 days. S14 was originally developed as a bioweapon by the US military to quickly neutralize rogue cities or countries, but things spiraled out of control when the virus escaped containment. I feel like as soon as you start creating shit like this, karma is just waiting to bite you in the ass. As the outbreak spreads, the government quarantines the city and blocks all escape routes, forcing survivors to race through highways packed with undead and hostile military forces trying to prevent the infection from spreading beyond city limits. Like damn, the city gets cooked by the government and then they tell the people they can't leave. I'd be pissed as hell. Throughout the series, players encounter mutated zombies, increasingly desperate military tactics, including carpet bombings, and even nukes like this shit is Call of Duty, and hints at a possible failsafe virus S15 designed to counteract S14, though its effectiveness is never confirmed in-game. The chaos and destruction escalates in the sequels, with more locations, new zombie types, and deeper glimpses into the military's failed containment efforts. The lore is expanded with radio chatter, environmental storytelling, and cutscenes that reveal the panic, confusion, and moral uncertainty surrounding the outbreak and government response. Road of the Dead stands out for blending intense driving action with a dark cinematic narrative about a city's last hours under siege by its own creator's mistakes. SCP-049, also known as the Plague Doctor, is this creepy-ass humanoid entity that looks like a medieval plague doctor but with way more existential dread. The Foundation keeps him contained because this dude has an obsession with what he calls the pestilence, some disease that apparently only he can detect and that he's convinced is killing humanity. What's crazy is nobody else can actually sense this so-called pestilence, which makes you wonder if this guy is completely delusional or if we're all missing something terrifying. His touch is instantly lethal to humans, like straight up causes cardiac arrest on contact. And honestly, that's already sketchy as hell, but it gets worse, because after killing someone, SCP-049 performs this crude surgical procedure on the corpses, turning them into what the Foundation calls SCP-0492 instances, basically his personal zombie army. These aren't your typical shambling undead either. They're described as reanimated corpses that retain some basic motor functions and can follow simple commands from their creator. The zombies are aggressive towards anyone except SCP-049 himself. What's really unsettling is that SCP-049 genuinely believes he's curing people, talking about his works with this polite, intellectual demeanor while literally creating an undead horde. The guy speaks multiple languages, shows advanced medical knowledge, and acts all sophisticated while being a walking apocalypse scenario. The Foundation has to constantly terminate SCP-0492 instances because they keep trying to breach containment. 049 represents this perfect blend of body horror and psychological terror, a creature that's methodical, resilient, and utterly alien in his worldview, creating zombies not out of malice, but out of a twisted sense of medical duty that makes him somehow more terrifying than any mindless monster. The Last Stand Aftermath hits you with one of the most brutal premises in zombie gaming. You're not just fighting to survive, you're literally running against the clock because you're already infected and slowly turning into the thing you're trying to escape. The world has been absolutely cooked for 15 years at this point, with a zombie virus that started simply enough with your typical bite to infection spread, but then decided to get creative and start mutating. What's really messed up is that people who were once thought to be immune are now getting taken down by new strains, because apparently this virus is the overachiever of apocalyptic plagues and refuses to stay contained or predictable. The survivors who are left have barricaded themselves in this fortified compound called the End, which honestly sounds like the most depressing name for a safe house ever. But here's the kicker. If you get exposed to the virus, they straight up exile you. Like, thanks for keeping us safe all these years, now go die alone in the wasteland because we can't risk it. You're basically sent out as a walking dead man with a backpack and a prayer, scavenging for supplies while your body slowly betrays you and turns you into the enemy. The brilliance of this setup is that every single run you make is literally your last chance to matter, to find some piece of information or resource that might help the people who kicked you out. And honestly, that's both heroic and tragic as hell. You're racing against your own biology, trying to uncover clues about how this virus keeps evolving while battling increasingly dangerous zombie mutations that prove this plague is nowhere near done with humanity. It's this perfect storm of personal stakes and cosmic horror. You're not just fighting for survival anymore. You're fighting for meaning in your final hours while the world around you continues to rot and adapt in ways that make recovery seem impossible. Arizona Sunshine throws you into the middle of a zombie apocalypse in the Arizona desert. The series puts you in the boots of a lone survivor who's got that perfect mix of desperation and dark humor that makes you think, this is probably how I'd cope with the world ending too. The Outbreak's origins is kept mysteriously vague, which is actually smart because sometimes the best horror doesn't need a detailed explanation. Sometimes shit just hits the fan and you gotta deal with it. You're wandering through abandoned towns and military outposts following radio signals like some kind of apocalyptic treasure hunt, except instead of gold, you're hoping to find literally any other living human being because isolation in the zombie wasteland hits different when you're the only one cracking jokes. The first game ends with this intense last stand scenario followed by a helicopter rescue. The sequel ups the ante by giving you a loyal dog companion, and let me tell you, nothing makes you more invested in survival than having a four-legged buddy counting on you. Plus, dogs are way better at detecting zombies than humans anyway. What makes this series stand out is that it's built exclusively for VR, so you're not just clicking to shoot, you're actually reaching for weapons, reloading manually, and physically ducking behind cover like your life depends on it. The immersive gunplay means every headshot feels satisfying and every missed shot makes you panic in ways that traditional gaming just can't match. Vertigo Games really knew what they were doing when they designed this for VR. The co-op multiplayer lets you team up with friends, which is great because misery loves company, and zombie apocalypses are definitely more fun when you can laugh about near-death experiences with your buddies. Arizona Sunshine proves that sometimes the best zombie games don't need complex lore or deep mysteries. Sometimes you just need good gameplay, a solid atmosphere, and a protagonist who can make you laugh while the world burns around you. Recoil Zombies on Roblox takes the classic zombie outbreak formula and basically says screw it, we're not gonna hold your hand with a detailed backstory. And honestly, that's kind of refreshing in a world where every zombie game tries to explain every little detail about Patient Zero and government conspiracies. The setup is beautifully simple. A mysterious viral outbreak turned most people into zombies, and now you and your friends have to deal with the consequences like it's the worst group project ever assigned. What's genius about this approach is that it hot drops you straight into abandoned labs, ruined cities, and overrun military bases without spending 20 minutes explaining how Dr. Evil accidentally knocked over a test tube because, let's be real, do we really need another oops, we made a bioweapon story? We already had that covered for Agent 15 in Dead Rails. The environmental storytelling does all the heavy lifting with scattered warning signs and research notes that hint at some kind of failed containment effort, which is way more unsettling than having everything spelled out for you. The zombies keep evolving and getting tougher as you progress, which shows that this isn't just some basic virus that ran its course. This thing is actively adapting and getting smarter, which is terrifying when you think about it. The fact that you need to rely on teamwork and quick reflexes with your friends adds this layer of chaos where everyone's screaming at each other while trying to coordinate zombie slaying strategies like you're planning a military operation. What makes this work so well is that the open-ended lore lets you and your squad create your own horror stories about what caused the outbreak, turning every playthrough into a collaborative storytelling session where you're all just trying to survive whatever nightmare scenario you've imagined. Those Who Remain hits you with that classic Patient Zero scenario where one person basically wiped over the entire human race by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now, the rest of us have to deal with the consequences of their bad luck. The viral outbreak spreads through the usual suspects, bites and scratches, but what makes this one brutal is how it completely overwhelmed governments and collapsed infrastructure so fast that nobody had time to figure out what the hell was happening. The game drops hints through environmental storytelling and mission briefings that suggest this might have been an engineered virus that went rogue, which honestly makes it even worse because that means someone actually designed this nightmare on purpose. You're left scavenging for resources and fortifying safe zones while fighting off increasingly dangerous waves of undead, and every round reveals more depressing details about how civilization crumbled like a house of cards. What's really messed up is how the lore emphasizes that humanity's downfall wasn't just about the virus itself. It was about fear and panic tearing people apart from the inside, which is probably the most realistic part of any zombie apocalypse scenario. The abandoned quarantine zones and cryptic graffiti scattered around the map tells this story of desperation and failed containment efforts, painting a picture of a world where trust became a luxury nobody could afford. With every wave you survive, the sense of hopelessness just keeps growing, making every victory feel like you're just delaying the inevitable rather than actually making progress. The game captures that feeling of being a temporary survivor in a world that's already decided you don't belong. Fight of the Living Dead takes the absolutely insane premise of dropping YouTubers into a zombie apocalypse and somehow makes it work as both horror entertainment and social commentary on influencer culture. This YouTube original reality series revolves around the CONOP, a shadowy fictional organization that unleashes a biological weapon just to mess with the internet celebrities, because apparently even evil corporations know that watching famous people panic is peak entertainment. The virus reanimates the dead within hours, turning abandoned hospitals and luxury resorts into death traps where your favorite content creators from back in the day have to actually survive instead of just pretending for views and ad revenue. What makes this outbreak hilarious is how it strips away the YouTubers' carefully crafted online personas. This was early Jake Paul before his fight night days, Vitali before the international prison sentence, and Fuzi before the water fasting and crash out streams. The biological weapon doesn't discriminate between subscribers and haters, creating genuine fear in people who usually control their image completely through editing and multiple takes. You get to watch these normally composed creators lose their shit in real time as they're forced to complete dangerous missions, form alliances, and make tough decisions while avoiding zombie attacks and unexpected betrayal from their fellow influencers. YouTube Originals really took a chance with this concept, proving that even influencers can influence their way out of a viral apocalypse. And honestly, watching these digital stars realize they can't edit out the scary parts is hilariously satisfying. Outside takes the zombie outbreak formula and gives it that distinctly Filipino flavor of government incompetence mixed with family drama. Even the apocalypse can't escape bureaucratic stupidity. This horror series drops a family into the middle of a sudden zombie outbreak that sweeps across the Philippines, forcing them to flee to the countryside like they're escaping both the undead and their relatives at the same time. The show keeps the virus's origin mysteriously vague, but drops enough hints about government cover-ups and failed containment efforts to make you think someone in a lab coat definitely dropped the ball on this one. But at this point in the zombie series, are we even surprised? What makes this outbreak particularly brutal is how fast it spreads through bites, turning victims into aggressive zombies while society collapses overnight. The real horror isn't just the zombies though. It's watching how rumors and misinformation fuel paranoia until the human threat becomes just as dangerous as the undead, which honestly feels way too realistic for comfort. The found footage style adds this layer of urgency that makes you feel like you're right there with the family, sweating through every encounter and questioning whether that random person might be infected. Outside nails that feeling of not knowing who to trust when everyone could potentially be carrying the virus, turning every human interaction into a potential death sentence. Apocalypse Z, The Beginning of the End, introduces the TSJ virus, which is basically what happens when scientists decide to create the perfect bioweapon and then someone inevitably fucks up the containment protocols. This reminds me of how the virus in Days Gone got started. This genetically engineered nightmare spreads like wildfire and turns people into full-on rage zombies within minutes of exposure. The movie keeps the virus's creators mysterious, but drops enough hints that it was cooked up in a lab as a bioweapon, which means somewhere there's a scientist who's either dead or living with the knowledge that they helped end the world. Once the infection hits, it's game over for normal life as governments scramble to lock down cities, shut down airspaces, and blow up everyone's phone with emergency alerts that are basically saying we're all cooked and best of luck. The virus isn't airborne, thankfully, but one bite or scratch and you're toast, which means trust becomes a luxury nobody can afford, and everyone's constantly on edge around each other. Survivors like Manel have to dodge both the infected and the government's heavy-handed quarantine zones, which honestly just make everything messier because nothing says we've got this under control like shooting civilians and barricading entire cities. The movie captures that bleak but relatable feeling of watching society fall apart when a virus goes viral for real, hitting way too close to home for anyone who's lived through COVID lockdowns and doom scrolling. Love, Death, and Robots takes the zombie genre and basically says, hold my beer, while proceeding to reinvent undead horror in the most creative ways possible across its anthology episodes. The series explores multiple origins for zombie outbreaks, ranging from reckless scientific experimentation and government bioweapons gone wrong to supernatural curses and cosmic events that prove humanity eventually gets f***ed with. What's brilliant about this approach is how each episode feels like a completely different nightmare. Sometimes the zombies come from a lab accident, other times they're the result of ancient relics or technology running amok. And occasionally, there's just the universe's way of saying you've pushed too far. The show's lore is intentionally eclectic, using zombies as metaphors for everything from unchecked curiosity to the dangers of playing God with science. And honestly, it's refreshing to see a series that doesn't feel the need to stick to one boring origin story. The specific zombie episodes are a sped-up crash course of how a zombie virus starts small and balloons into a massive panic-driven breakdown and doom. The hilarious introduction with the couple getting freaky and my man's humping a statue that falls and creates a global pandemic was so realistic in what I could see us doing in real time. I couldn't help but laugh. From how the city becomes overrun and people begin to literally run each other over, up to the president getting closed in at the White House and going full Rambo mode, spamming a machine gun and launching nukes. The episode accurately depicts how this would all unfold down to the T, all under 3 minutes. The creative freedom of the episodes shows you never know if you're getting a tragic human drama or an absurd cosmic joke, but it's always thought-provoking and usually leaves you questioning humanity's life choices. Love, Death, and Robots proves that zombie stories work best when you're willing to experiment with the formula instead of just recycling the same old virus escapes from the lab bullshit. Alive transforms the zombie apocalypse into a claustrophobic nightmare by trapping young gamer Oh Jong-woo in his family's high-rise apartment where Seoul falls to a mysterious infection, highlighting that sometimes the worst prison is your own home. The film strips away typical zombie movie tropes of group dynamics and mobile survival, instead focusing on one person's slow mental deterioration during extended isolation, which honestly hits different after we've all experienced our own version of lockdowns. Joan Woo's connection to the outside world comes through social media, gaming streams, and drone footage, creating this uniquely modern take on apocalyptic storytelling that reflects our digital age anxieties about being connected but completely alone. The zombies are fast, aggressive, and drawn to sound, but the real horror comes from watching the protagonist slowly lose his sanity while rationing dwindling food supplies and realizing that all his gaming skills don't mean shit when the apocalypse is real. When he eventually makes contact with another survivor across the courtyard, their relationship becomes a lifeline that drives the film's emotional core, because apparently, even during the end of the world, human connection is what keeps us from completely losing our shit. The infection's origin remains deliberately mysterious, allowing the focus to stay on intimate human drama rather than scientific explanations, which makes the whole experience feel more personal and terrifying. Alive highlights that sometimes the most effective zombie stories aren't about fighting hordes of undead, but about fighting the urge to give up when you're completely alone. Block Z takes the zombie outbreak to a Filipino university where a deadly virus spreads through bites and turns students into fast-moving monsters, but throws in the twist that survivor PJ discovers she's completely immune after getting bitten, which is either the best or worst luck possible depending on how you look at it. The virus acts like rabies on steroids and spreads so fast that the military seals off the entire campus, shooting anyone who tries to escape, and basically turns the university into a death trap where students have to use their medical knowledge to fight off their former classmates and teachers. These infected move with scary speed and violence, making every encounter feel like a final exam where the wrong answer gets you eaten alive. And honestly, that's probably still less stressful than actual college finals. The university setting becomes the perfect nightmare location because students live together in dorms, eat together in cafeterias, and attend classes in packed rooms where one bite can start a chain reaction faster than gossip. What makes Block Z unique is how it blends real medical science with Filipino culture, showing how local beliefs and traditions clash with the unstoppable spread of the virus in ways that feel authentic and terrifying. PJ's immunity might be the key to stopping the virus, but she has to watch her friends transform into the same creatures that are trying to eat her alive, raising questions about sacrifice, hope, and what it means to survive when your whole world turns against you and everyone you care about becomes your enemy.